"Here they come," Hijari suddenly said, only loud enough so that Kaga and the two soldiers behind him could hear. These words were not repeated down the group as the order previously had been, for silence was now key. The others further behind would be forced to react when those ahead of them moved. Despite the importance of silence, the thick-headed Kaga stated in question, "You sure? I don't see shit." Without a return to motion, Hijari replied, "You must learn to use all of your senses, Kagazume. In this case, smell." The young man felt stupid then, because he realized that he had been smelling roast duck for half a minute already. "Okay, but," Kaga began to ask for clarity, the two behind him staring with anger due to his impudence, hoping their vision would tunnel a hole through his head. "The wind," Hijari interrupted, as he pointed. This caused the young man to grumble silently and look down the path, peeking through gaps amongst the trees, spotting 3 small figures in the darkness, slowly approaching their position. They would pass directly by, following the same path they always did. Hijari was well aware of their projected route, so that was how he knew from which way they were coming. The orders Tokate Hijari had given them before setting out tonight were still understood. Everyone was to wait until the two of them, Hijari and Kaga, killed the first run of attackers, and then they were to join in if necessary. The man in front of Isha, a worrywart not much older than he named Eiji, suddenly turned his head to speak. He was relaying orders from Hijari. His lord had told him to wait until this moment to give Isha the orders, specifically this moment. Wait and go around back through the trees. Kill the stragglers who try to run away. Isha gave a nod and saw a bead of sweat on Eiji's forehead as he turned about. His master wanted as few rebels to survive this as possible. Isha understood that in full. There was only a moment to go, a sword aiming for the side of the adult vessel's head, when Kuroga sensed something, footsteps off to his right. They were fast and heavy, so Kuroga decided to deal with this interruption first. He began to turn, his years of swordsmanship working for him, fueling his body with controlled adrenaline and skill. Just as he turned right, something large passed in front of him, ducking to go under his blade. There was a sharp pain, but not one of much consequence coming from his stomach. Kaga slid to a halt at Kuroga's left side, his sword extended out from his sheath. Not much evidence shown on his blade of an attack, but his sword had cut through almost the entire depth of Kuroga's belly. The rebel commander felt himself unable to move, his vision already greatly blurring. With one last breath he began to fall over, his nearly 2 halves trying to fall apart. He saw his family smiling at him before the darkness of death took him over and he collapsed. A corpse. The 5 closest men, those running desperately behind Kuroga, were stunned, but they were reacting all the same. They drew their weapons and charged, while the vessels looked over their shoulders, panicking and unsure of what action they should take. Kaga saw the 5 coming at him, and it was more than he had been told to expect. However, he did not react in any way except to be prepared. He shuffled his feet and moved his sword in front of him as he turned slightly to face towards the crowding foes. The rebels looked at him, staring at his tall figure, and they recognized the symbols on his torso and sleeves, the spades of gold. They understood in that moment that they were being ambushed, and also that it did not matter. Kaga waited, the vessels to his back, and made sure not to move until the last moment. Then, as one rebel swung overhead at him, he jerked forward, smashing his katana against his opponent's, shoving it aside so he could easily sink his sword into the man's face. The former person choked on life as Kaga took a moment to sigh, a moment he did not have. Hijari stepped into the view of the vessels, blocking their vision of the fight as he said sharply, "Keep going." The next rebel came around the right side of his dead ally, and Kaga slammed his left hand forward to shove the body off of his blade. It was going to be close, but if he had to, he would cut through this corpse's head to nick the newest enemy's chest. As he struggled to get his sword out in time, his worries were stripped away. Hijari blasted past him and cut from the right kidney to the spine of that attacker. The rebel was not even sure what had happened, and would never know. Continuing, Hijari easily stabbed the last of 2 in the chest, as Kaga's sword slammed forcefully against the metal pole held by the last of the 5. The rebel could not move it because Kaga was pushing on him so hard, and the pole was touching his nose, brushing it violently. What the hell, the rebel thought, unable to think beyond defending himself. Kaga growled and yanked his sword to the right, shoving the man's weapon aside and opening a gash in his cheek. The pain was terrible because there was a slice directly through, exposing his teeth. Quickly the elite brought his sword back and cut, from right to left, just under the rebel's elbows. the metal passing through his ribs, heart, lungs, and a few other highly vital areas. "You've been here?" Isha asked plainly, lacking emotion for now. "All this time, you've been here? You're not dead? This whole time you haven't been dead?" "Nope," Akira answered happily. "Not dead at all. I never thought we'd see each other again. Somehow I just never thought it would happen. I figure one of us would die on some battlefield long before this day came about, with all the fighting our sides have been up to." He then paused and stared at Isha's handsome face, his delicate features, and his long flowing hair. "I've missed you. How about Kaga? Is he here with you? Are you two still clinging to each other? He was never able to go anywhere without you. Man, I've wanted to tease him for a while." His sentences were slightly broken up. There was no real flow in his words, but his voice was the same. Isha cracked a smile, and there was a ray of joy coming from him as he responded, "You always loved picking on him, even when you shouldn't have." Isha pictured something going over a waterfall. "You picked on him even though he was older and defended you." There was still happiness in Isha's voice, but it was quickly draining. "I can't believe you're a rebel now." This statement was more for Isha's own sake than Akira's. He had to convince himself, and quickly, that Akira had left their graces to become an enemy, an opposing force. The shorter man continued to smile, but it changed drastically from gleeful to violent. Isha did not want to even look at his friend as Akira commented, "At least I'm not associated with those disgusting wolves." Although his smile left, Isha's mind preparing himself for what had to be done, Akira's blared on, like a fire that refused to go out. This was because he was happy, no matter what happened in the next couple of seconds. They both lunged and were both blocked as one tried to counter first and then the other. Including Kaga, the third child from Tobe, the three of them had trained together. They had learned how to wield the sword from scratch together, and they knew, even with the varying styles and levels of experience, how to predict one another. Isha was finding this still evident. Akira was fast and strong. In the few seconds he had been fighting him, Isha had already learned that. However, as Akira's attacks came in, he felt as if he knew what this man would do, and vice versa. Furthermore, he attempted strikes that he was sure would get through, only to find them thwarted easily. It had been 3 minutes of fighting by the time Hijari and Kaga had run over a hill in the road to look down at the battle. Hijari heard Kaga gasp and made a note of it. Kaga could not believe what he was, no, who he was seeing.